Hi, my name is Sina Toossi. I'm a senior research analyst at the National Iranian American Council, and today I wanted to talk to you about peace and security in the Persian Gulf and whether a more cooperative relationship between the Persian Gulf countries is possible. To do this, I'm going to answer three questions. The Trump administration's approach to the Middle East centered on casting Iran as singularly responsible for regional instability and all regional ills. In line with this view, Trump adopted a maximum pressure campaign aimed at forcing Iran to fundamentally alter its foreign and national security policies or risk total economic collapse. In turn, Trump and his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, gave unconditional support to U.S. allies like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. This included not just advancing their preferred policies on Iran by leaving the nuclear deal and imposing severe economic pressure, but also things like moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the occupied Golan Heights as part of Israel, supporting the Saudi war in Yemen, and turning a blind eye to Saudi crimes like the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. However, Trump's approach to the region only demonstrated the role that U.S. allies and the U.S. itself also plays in fomenting regional instability. Trump's policies took the U.S. to the cusp of another disastrous regional war and reignited the Iran nuclear crisis. His support of U.S. regional partners like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE led to a classic moral hazard problem, with these countries getting more bellicose and adventurous due to thinking that America would back them no matter what. The Persian Gulf and Middle East will not know lasting peace, stability, or prosperity as long as the U.S. and its regional allies center their approach in the region on a major country like Iran having zero regional influence. What's necessary for lasting peace is for regional powers, especially the Persian Gulf countries, adopting a non-zero-sum view of each other's interests and seeking to address each other's grievances and concerns through dialogue and not confrontation. Getting to a more stable region requires the U.S. adopting a more even-handed approach and engaging rather than encaging Iran. This will reduce America's security burden in the region, incentivize U.S. allies to do more to curry U.S. favor, and allow for U.S.-Iran cooperation on a host of issues of common interest. The U.S. should seek to push powers in the Persian Gulf towards cooperation and not confrontation. All the Persian Gulf states, whether Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, or the UAE, have a major stake in the stability of the region, and many of their economies are overwhelmingly dependent on hydrocarbon exports out of the region. They have a shared interest in keeping the Persian Gulf secure and have the means to keep it secure. Despite this, the U.S. keeps a massive military presence in the Persian Gulf, and according to one study by Princeton University, it has spent more than $7 trillion protecting the Persian Gulf from 1976 to 2007 alone. And in recent years, the U.S. only gets less than 10% of Persian Gulf energy itself. This means the U.S. gives the major importers of Persian Gulf energy, like China and India, a free ride when it comes to their energy security. The U.S. has the leverage and diplomatic means necessary to push the Persian Gulf countries towards cooperating to keep their own neighborhoods secure. This will regionalize the burden of securing the Persian Gulf and allow the U.S. to reduce its military footprint and dedicate its resources to more pressing issues of concern for it elsewhere and at home in the U.S. It can also lead to lasting peace and stability in the region. But accomplishing this will require the U.S. to diplomatically engage Iran and use its considerable leverage over its allies to push them into dialogue with Iran. The Middle East is desperately in need of a legitimate, effective, and inclusive multilateral security organization. It is in fact the only region of the world that's bereft of one. A Persian Gulf security and cooperation system can be modeled after the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, or the OSCE, which was established in 1994 but had its origins in the 1975 Helsinki Accords that led to institutionalized dialogue and deconfliction between the NATO countries in Europe and the Warsaw Pact states. Such a system in the Persian Gulf can help ease the security dilemmas between Iran, Iraq, and the Gulf Cooperation Council countries through institutionalized forums for regular dialogue and the facilitation of non-aggression pacts. It could lead to critical transparency measures and arms control limits that would reduce tensions over time, just as the OSCE accomplished in Europe. For such a system to be successful, external powers, including the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the EU, and the other major importers of Persian Gulf energy, must play a helpful role in encouraging Persian Gulf dialogue. The creation of such a security and cooperation system in the Persian Gulf would be a recognition that the endemic insecurities of the Middle East ultimately require regional solutions, and that dialogue and not confrontation is the only path to durably resolving regional tensions. The US and other global powers should support the creation of such a system.